Welcome to Human Monsters. The following is drawn from a fact sheet by the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. Child sex trafficking, CST, is a severe form of child abuse and trauma that affects youth in many critically important ways. In particular, the impact of CST on development may interfere with learning and functioning in school. Professionals have a pivotal role to play in identifying youth who have been or are being trafficked, as well as vulnerable youth, and responding effectively to ensure their safety and support. What is child sex trafficking? Child sex trafficking is defined as the giving or receiving of anything of value, example, money, shelter, food, clothing, drugs, etc., to any person in exchange for a sex act with someone under 18. Force, fraud, or coercion are not required, nor is it a requirement that a third party facilitates or benefits from the exchange, although these elements are often present. The following are examples of CST. A 13-year-old transgender student runs away from school with a 14-year-old peer. The friend posts an ad with pictures of the student on an adult services website to get money to cover the cost of hotel, food, and hormone treatment. A 7-year-old boy is sold by his parents for sex in exchange for drugs or money to buy drugs. A 16-year-old undocumented high school girl lives with her 23-year-old boyfriend after her parents are deported. He then tells her to engage in sex with other men for money, sometimes during school hours, to, quote, contribute to their household. Who is vulnerable to being sex trafficked? Sex trafficking occurs among youth from all socioeconomic classes, races, ethnicities, and genders in urban, suburban, and rural communities in the United States. However, some youths are at heightened risk due to a complex interplay of individual, relationship, community, and societal factors. Societal. Sexualization of children, gender-based violence, strict gender roles, homophobia and transphobia, tolerance of the marginalization of others, lack of awareness of child trafficking, lack of resources for youth who have been exploited, social injustice, structural racism, and tolerance of community and relationship violence. Community relationship. Community under-resourced schools and neighborhoods, community violence, community social norms, gang presence, commercial sex in the area, transient male populations in the area, poverty and lack of employment opportunities. Individual relationship. Friends, family involved in commercial sex, family dysfunction, intimate partner violence, caregiver loss or separation, poverty and unemployment, abuse, neglect, systems involvement, i.e., child protection, juvenile justice, experiencing homelessness, having run away, LGBT identity, intellectual and/or developmental disability, truancy, unmonitored, risky internet and social media use, behavioral or mental health concerns, substance use, unaccompanied migration, trauma and child sex trafficking. Often youth who have experienced sex trafficking have histories of multiple traumas and adversities in their lives. This includes early traumatic events that may have contributed to trafficking vulnerability, especially child sexual abuse, physical abuse and neglect, traumatic loss and separation, and exposure to family and community violence, as well as while being trafficked, example sexual violence, physical assault, witnessing violence against others, etc. As a result of their experiences, youth who have experienced sex trafficking often have significant trauma-related symptoms, including difficulties with attention and concentration, control of emotions and behaviors, healthy relationships, and self-esteem. What educational professionals need to know. About trafficking and youth who are trafficked, education professionals have a critical role to play in identifying students who are experiencing trafficking or students who are more vulnerable, as well as to providing effective support to survivors in the educational environment. These professionals should be aware that trafficking and sexual exploitation activities may originate from school or occur on school grounds, including recruitment by peers or third-party traffickers, and even commercial sex acts. On rare occasions, school staff may be aware of and involved in the trafficking of students. Students of all gender identities may participate in the recruitment and exploitation of others for many reasons, including coercion by a trafficker or as a way of reducing their own exposure to violence. Many first experiences of trafficking, especially in familial trafficking, occur at ages much younger than high school. Prior to experiencing trafficking, many youths have periods of low school attendance and academic difficulties, often as a result of placement changes, neglect, or trauma-related difficulties with attention and concentration. These impacts may contribute to discomfort and disconnection in the school environment and may result in efforts to cope, example substance use, truancy, that further contribute to trafficking vulnerability. While experiencing trafficking, many youths continue to attend school. Students may miss or be tardy because of lack of sleep, court appearances, lack of safe transportation, shame, bullying, relocation, and threats from traffickers. They may undergo noticeable changes in academic interests, concentration, or performance, in peer group or peer-to-peer interactions, or in appearance. The opposite may also occur. Youth may show no obvious changes in any of these areas. Following identification and intervention, it can be difficult for youths to successfully engage with school. Not only have youths who have experienced trafficking likely fallen behind academically, they oftentimes feel out of place with their peers and struggle to integrate socially. Without adequate supports, youths who have experienced trafficking may continue to face barriers to achievement, graduation, economic mobility, and employment opportunities, even when they try to engage in school. If left unaddressed, these factors may in turn contribute to a risk of trafficking re-victimization. Youths may experience a range of adversities and have many associated unmet needs. These include mental health, medical, physical, educational, legal, and economic impacts, including traumatic stress symptoms, depression, anxiety, substance use, suicide and self-injury, unplanned or forced pregnancy, sexually transmitted infections, malnutrition, incarceration, school dropout, and unemployment. What educational professionals can do to improve recognition and response to CST in schools and communities. Educational professionals should be vigilant and learn the risk factors and possible signs of CST. Pay attention to red flags like physical, emotional, and behavioral changes in youth. For instance, poor nutrition, poor sleep, hygiene, physical injury could be indicators of child sex trafficking. However, the absence of these indicators does not preclude trafficking. Consider that youth who have experienced trafficking may be dealing with many factors that will impact their academic performance, including being involved with the child welfare and juvenile justice systems. Know the school's or district's protocol for responding to CST. If the school does not have one, promote its development. No mandated reporting requirements regarding concerns about CST. Many states now include CST in their mandated reporting child abuse code. Question with care. Youth may be reluctant to provide full or accurate information to professionals, often out of concern for their own safety or to protect the trafficker and other relationships seen as critical to their survival. A survivor of sex trafficking recalled, "I've been harmed before by people I thought I could trust." Obtaining a full disclosure from a student is not the goal and is not a prerequisite for providing the student with supports or making a report to Child Protective Services. Respond to suspected CST in the same way as known CST. Report to authorities, create a safety plan, and offer services. Maintain a calm, non-judgmental, supportive attitude through words and body language. Example, "I am here to help you," and "I care about your safety." Promote increased awareness of CST in the education workforce, including familiarity with community resources, anti-trafficking organizations, service systems, and hotline numbers. Plan for and make appropriate accommodations to support youth and address barriers to education associated with trafficking, such as transportation to and from school to avoid high trafficking areas, on-site mental health services and supports, makeup classes, tutoring if the student must miss school for court or partial credit for completed work. Develop a CST awareness and prevention program for and among students and incorporate information about trafficking and healthy, unhealthy relationships into health education. Engage youth leaders in the effort to increase awareness and prevention of trafficking. This is a relevant press release issued by the Halton Regional Police in Ontario, Canada. The Halton Regional Police Service has made 2 arrests and laid multiple charges as a result of a lengthy human trafficking investigation. The Halton Regional Police Service began an investigation into a report of an underage female, 17 years old, that was allegedly being sexually trafficked by a male suspect within the Burlington and Greater Toronto area. Members of the HRPS Human Trafficking Unit took carriage of the investigation, during which 3 additional adult females were identified as being sexually trafficked by the same suspect at various time periods, beginning in December of 2022. Sexual services were advertised, and the victims' photos posted on social media platforms, during which the suspect coerced, controlled, and exploited the victims in the sex trade, while the suspect benefited financially from the exploitation. As the investigation unfolded, a second male suspect was also identified as being involved in sexually trafficking one of the adult female victims associated to the first suspect. As a result of the investigation, Aaron Verghese and William Osei-Opoku were identified, and efforts were undertaken to locate and arrest both suspects. On December 15, 2023, Aaron Verghese, 22, of Burlington, was arrested and charged with the following offenses: trafficking a person, child victim; receive material benefit, child victim; making child pornography; possession of child pornography; distributing child pornography; receive material benefit for the purpose of trafficking; knowingly advertise sexual services, 4 counts; procuring, 3 counts. Verghese was held for a bail hearing and remains in custody pending trial. On January 28, 2025, William Osei-Opoku, 28, of Pickering, was arrested and charged with the following offenses: trafficking a person; receive material benefit for the purpose of trafficking; knowingly advertise sexual services; procuring. Osei-Opoku has been held in custody pending a bail hearing in Milton. Investigators believe there may be further human trafficking victims and advise Verghese often utilizes the alias Ace, while Osei-Opoku often utilizes the alias J. This was issued by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. 12 Ontario men, 1 American, arrested in Niagara for trafficking young people. Police. The region is an epicenter for trafficking in Ontario, says local YWCA. 13 men have been arrested at a Niagara Falls, Ontario hotel and charged in connection with human trafficking of young people, police say. The suspects, who range in age from 20 to 60, face charges related to child luring, obtaining sexual services, and inviting sexual exploitation of a young person, says Niagara Police. The arrests took place between January 31st and February 3rd and come after the Niagara Regional Police Services Human Trafficking Unit connected online with young people believed to be offering sexual services for money. The men who were arrested are mostly from the Niagara region. One is from Windsor, Ontario, and another is from Buffalo, New York, police say. Their names weren't published due to court-ordered publication bans. An overnight human trafficking bust in Toronto led to the arrest of a female pimp, and the National's Iona Roumeliotis got a first-hand look at how it all happened. These arrests showcase the dedication of our members in ensuring some of the most vulnerable members of our community are protected, sending a strong message that the predatory behaviors associated with human trafficking will not be tolerated in Niagara, said Police Chief Bill Forty in a statement. Niagara police say they were assisted by the Ontario Provincial Police's Anti-Trafficking Intelligence Joint Force and Border Enforcement Team, as well as the Canada Border Services Agency, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Under the Criminal Code, human trafficking is defined as recruiting, transferring, receiving, holding, concealing, or harboring a person and exercising control to exploit them. The YWCA Niagara region describes Niagara as an epicenter for human trafficking for sexual, labor, and domestic exploitation. The branch works with local police, doctors, and firefighters to recognize sexual exploitation with survivors, to provide them with resources and support, and with the wider community to prevent trafficking. The reason for its prevalence in the region is layered. Kayla Mayer, the YWCA's Director of Programs, told CBC Hamilton. But one major factor, she said, is that transportation is not a problem for traffickers. The Niagara region borders the U.S. and is linked to the 401 corridor, a highway stretching between Windsor and the Quebec border and a common route for traffickers, said Mayer. People can also be trafficked through Port Colborne's waterways, which connect to Lake Erie. Niagara's tourist area also has a plethora of hotels and motels where trafficking can stay hidden, said Mayer. There are also farms where vulnerable workers may be experiencing labor trafficking, which often happens in tandem with sex trafficking, she added. Mayer described human trafficking as a silent crime, as it's often difficult to investigate or lay charges. Investigators must rely a lot on testimony from survivors who may not want to pursue justice through the court system. Many survivors choose not to report it at all, she said. There's a lot of trust that has been broken within our social and police systems, Mayer said. Police in Niagara said this week they used intelligence gathering and a victim-centered approach when conducting investigations related to the recent charges. Police arresting 13 people is rare and will help to slowly rebuild trust with survivors, Mayer said. This is a report on the issue of child sex trafficking released by the United Nations Human Rights Council. Significant increase in child victims of trafficking. Children make up almost 4 in 10 victims of trafficking worldwide, but the true number of youngsters caught up in the illegal practice is likely much higher, a senior UN official warned. In a new report, Dr. Najat Mala Majid, who's the special representative of the UN Secretary General on Violence Against Children, said that traffickers are quick to exploit technological advancements and people in emergencies. She said that children, mainly girls, are increasingly vulnerable as poverty, food insecurity, humanitarian crises, and conflict lead to displacement and violence, which are among the main drivers of illegal trafficking. Conviction for trafficking in children remain low, and perpetrators continue to enjoy impunity. Corruption, stigma, fear, and the lack of protection limits children's ability to report and seek justice, she told the Human Rights Council in Geneva. Highly profitable crime. As a result, trafficking in children remains a low-cost and low-risk, yet highly profitable crime, generating billions of dollars annually. Dr. Mala Majid warned that trafficking networks are growing alarmingly and are increasingly well-organized. She said that criminal ringleaders now use artificial intelligence to lower their overhead and reduce the likelihood of detection. The senior UN official also noted that the demand for exploitative services involving children is increasing, from sexual exploitation, domestic slavery, child marriage, recruitment into armed groups, forced begging, and criminal activities. The UN Special Representative for Children caught up in conflict, Virginia Gamba, told the Council that more than 1 in 6 children worldwide are living in conflict zones. She called on all states to produce policies which allow every child to be shielded from harm so that they can grow up in a peaceful environment. This case was covered in a press release issued by the United States Attorney's Office, Southern District of West Virginia. Federal jury finds Charleston man and woman guilty of sex trafficking conspiracy, minor female among 4 sex trafficking victims. Charleston, West Virginia. After 5 days of trial, a federal jury convicted Tewan Robert Bailey, also known as Quick, 49, and Carrie Roy, also known as Carrie Ash, 52, both of Charleston, on Monday, September 29, 2025, for their roles in a sex trafficking conspiracy that operated in the Charleston and Rand areas of Kanawha County. Evidence at trial showed that between November 2023 and July 2024, Bailey trafficked 4 different female victims, including a 17-year-old girl, requiring each to engage in commercial sex acts and provide all the money they received to him. Bailey also obstructed the federal investigation of a sex trafficking conspiracy by seeking to interfere with any potential cooperation and testimony by the minor female victim. Bailey coerced his adult victims through threats and violence, including by sending them threatening voice messages through Facebook Messenger and physically beating and sexually assaulting them. Bailey supplied drugs to the victims who suffered from substance use disorders and withheld drugs from them as punishment. Roy aided and abetted Bailey and conspired with him and others in the trafficking of the minor female. Roy also transported the 3 adult victims to and from meetings for commercial sex acts and collected money from these acts for Bailey. Bailey became a fugitive after a warrant for his arrest was issued in the case on July 23, 2024. The United States Marshals Service captured Bailey on January 17, 2025 in Lexington, Kentucky. The jury found Bailey and Roy guilty of 1 count each of sex trafficking of a minor and conspiring to commit sex trafficking of a minor. The jury also found Bailey guilty of 3 counts of sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, and 1 count of obstruction of justice. Bailey and Roy are scheduled to be sentenced on February 9th, 2026. Bailey faces a mandatory minimum of 15 years and up to life in prison. Roy faces a mandatory minimum of 10 years and up to life in prison. Bailey was particularly brutal in his mistreatment of the victims of this case, subjecting them to violent threats and assaults. Sex trafficking is a depraved crime of exploitation, and the United States Attorney's Office for the Southern District of West Virginia is committed to delivering justice for the victims of sex trafficking, said Acting United States Attorney Lisa G. Johnston. I commend the U.S. Department of Homeland Security Investigations, the Charleston Police Department, the United States Marshals Service, and the Kanawha County Sheriff's Office for their investigative work in this case, and the Metropolitan Drug Enforcement Network team and the West Virginia Fusion Center for the assistance they provided. I also commend Assistant United States Attorneys Jennifer Rada Harold and Jennifer D. Gordon, and our trial team for securing guilty verdicts on all counts against Bailey and Roy. This story was released by the United States Attorney's Office, Southern District of New York. Former Yonkers teacher sentenced to 25 years in connection with sexual exploitation of minor student. United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Jay Clayton, announced today that Sandy Carrazas Pinez was sentenced to 25 years in prison for enticing a minor to engage in illegal sexual activity. Carrazas Pinez's sentence was imposed by U.S. District Judge John P. Cronin, who also presided over her guilty plea. According to the court documents and statement made during court proceedings, Carrazas Pinez was a high school teacher at a school for kindergarten through 12th grade students located in Yonkers, New York, School 1. From in or around November 2022 through February 2023, Carrazas Pinez abused her position as a teacher at School 1 by inducing and attempting to induce a student, minor victim 1, at School 1 into a sexual relationship with Carrazas Pinez. Minor victim 1 was 16 years old at the time of the abuse. Carrazas Pinez singled out minor victim 1 for personal attention at School 1. In addition, Carrazas Pinez induced minor victim 1 to engage in sexual activity with her by leading minor victim 1 to believe that they were in a romantic relationship. Carrazas Pinez used her personal cell phone to call, text, and video call minor victim 1 to arrange sexual encounters and to repeatedly induce minor victim 1 to engage in live-streamed sexually explicit conduct while on video calls with Carrazas Pinez. In text messages with minor victim 1, Carrazas Pinez referred to her sexual encounters with minor victim 1 and the live depictions of sexually explicit conduct she induced minor victim 1 to create as GIFs. Carrazas Pinez also used her personal cell phone to send minor victim 1 sexually suggestive photographs of herself along with sexually explicit text messages. After sending the photographs and messages, Carrazas Pinez instructed minor victim 1 to delete them and inquired repeatedly as to whether minor victim 1 had done so. To facilitate their sexual encounters outside the premises of School 1, Carrazas Pinez directed minor victim 1 in text messages to obtain day passes from School 1 to be permitted to leave campus. Carrazas Pinez then met minor victim 1 at a location near School 1's campus and drove minor victim 1 to another location. On multiple occasions, while parked in Carrazas Pinez's car at various locations, including in or around the Bronx, Yonkers, and Staten Island, New York, Carrazas Pinez engaged in sexual intercourse and other sexual acts and attempted to do so with minor victim 1. In addition to the prison term, Carrazas Pinez, 36, of Bethel, Connecticut, was sentenced to 5 years of supervised release. This story was disseminated by the Associated Press. 9 indicted in child sex trafficking case involving teen found on a docked yacht in New York. 9 people have been indicted in a child sex trafficking case involving a teen girl found last month on a boat docked at a New York marina following a nearly month-long disappearance. The 7 men and 2 women pleaded not guilty during their arraignments in Suffolk County Court in Riverhead, according to Timothy Finnerty, a court spokesperson. They face a range of charges, including child sex trafficking, kidnapping, rape, and endangering the welfare of the child, online court records show. Prosecutors told the judge the defendants took advantage of a vulnerable 14-year-old, raping her multiple times and marketing her for sex. The teen, who the Associated Press has not named because she is a minor, disappeared for about 25 days. She was seen on surveillance video leaving her house on Long Island, a suburban region east of New York City, and getting into a car on December 9th. She was eventually found by her father on a yacht docked at a marina in Islip on January 3rd. The father has told local news outlets he received an anonymous tip about his daughter's location after posting about her disappearance on social media and offering a reward of up to $15,000. Among the defendants was Daniel Burke, a Long Island man who prosecutors say was among the men who had sex with the teen. He faces kidnapping, rape, and other charges. Fortunately, our justice system is based on facts and evidence, Oscar Grisefio, Burke's lawyer, said in an emailed statement. And the evidence in this case, in the words of the actual complainant, suggests that she was never held against her will. Ralph Knowles, another Long Island resident, was charged with rape and other counts, according to online court records. Ralph looks forward to receiving discovery in a timely manner and his day in court where the truth will prevail, his lawyer Chase Brown said in an emailed statement. Other defendants in the case have also denied the charges, Newsday reports. 3 of them were remanded to the county jail, while the 6 others had their previously set bail increased by the judge, according to the newspaper. 3 additional defendants have also been charged in connection with the case, but are not included in the initial indictment, Newsday reports. Among them is a staffer at a state mental health facility, who prosecutors say groped the girl while she was receiving inpatient treatment following the ordeal. He's been charged with criminal sexual contact with a person incapable of consent and endangering the welfare of a child. A PSA to parents regarding their children's safety online. Child luring and exploitation through Snapchat is on the rise. Here's what you should look out for. Reports of luring in 2022 reached an all-time high of over 800, says Canadian Child Protection Agency, law enforcement, and government officials. Say they've seen an increase in social media platforms such as Snapchat being used to lure and sexually exploit children and youth since 2020. They believe the rise is partly due to increased screen times as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic shifting people to largely communicate online. In London, Ontario, police have received numerous reports of adults using social media to inappropriately engage with minors, including the exchange of intimate photos and videos, and sexual solicitation. We're seeing exploitation in relation to children all across the age spectrum, said Detective Jeremy Dan of London Police's Internet Child Exploitation Unit. Generally, it's on social media apps and chat rooms. Sextortion or sexual-based extortion for profit is becoming extremely common. Several times per week, we have reports coming in about a local child that's been victimized in this way, Dan said. In December, David G. Nichol, 50, of London, faced charges for a second time after allegedly posing as a 14-year-old boy to sextort teens. He was charged with more than 30 sexual assault offenses dating back to 2018. A few weeks later, London Police's ICE unit arrested a 44-year-old man from Scarborough in suburban Toronto for allegedly luring teens under age 16. Although unrelated, in both cases, Snapchat was allegedly used to communicate with young people. In 2021, Dan's unit saw a 38% jump in reported incidents of online enticement and sexual exploitation compared to the previous year. In 2022, that number rose to 40%, he said. But Dan said this surge is not unique to London. His team works with ICE units across Canada, and all of them are noticing the same increase in and patterns of exploitation, Dan said. In an emailed statement to CBC News, a spokesperson for Snapchat wrote, Snap was intentionally designed to be a visual communications platform for communicating with your real friends. And our product design includes safeguards to make it harder for strangers to find and contact younger people. We routinely work with safety experts and law enforcement to help combat exploitation. We have also rolled out new in-app safety tools called Family Center, with the goal of giving parents more insight into who their teens are communicating with on Snapchat, the statement reads. Many modern social media apps are designed to delete messages after they've been sent or received. They are designed to keep parents in the dark about what their child is truly up to, Dan said. This feature poses a risk as it can hide problematic behaviors. Catherine Tabak of the Winnipeg-based Canadian Centre for Child Protection said platforms such as Instagram and Snapchat are created in a way that appeals to kids. With Snapchat, there's a false sense of security that information or pictures are being deleted, and that there's no evidence of communication that's occurring between two people on that platform. Tabak said adult offenders often connect with teens on one platform, such as Instagram, and then move the conversation onto Snapchat. Although online luring existed before the pandemic, its impact has snowballed into higher volumes of reported incidents, Tabak said. In 2022, her national tip line, cybertip.ca, received more than 800 reports, up from more than 600 in 2021. But Tabak said these numbers are only the tip of the iceberg. The families who reach out to C3P often do so once the matter has escalated to a point where a child is seeking help, she said. Dan and Tabak gave these tips for parents and children. What can parents do? Monitor what your child is doing online. Know who they're talking to and what that communication entails. Don't let them talk to someone you don't personally know or trust. Be familiar with the apps your child is using. If you don't know how an app works, don't let your child use it. Don't let them use apps that hide or delete what they're doing. Have the passwords for all devices and apps that require them. Check children's devices frequently and unexpectedly. Start conversations early on. If giving a child a device, talk about the potential threats. Tabak suggests using examples from the media. Tell the child what you've read and get their insight on it. Keep an open line of dialogue with your children. Dan said that many times they don't share these incidents with their parents due to shame and fear of punishment. Ensure devices are used in an open area and have rules on times of the day your child is allowed to use them. Cut off Wi-Fi at night, Tabak said, as most instances occur later in the evenings when parents are asleep. Lead by example. Minimize using your own device at the dinner table and teach children it's healthy to disconnect every now and then. What should kids beware of? Tabak said offenders often pretend to be someone from the child's community, such as a child from another school in the area, a friend of a friend, etc. If someone the child meets online tries to move communication from one platform to another, such as from Instagram onto Snapchat, comments that are sexual in nature, especially early on, pitting children against their parents, or anything is said about the parents being too strict or not understanding. Persistence, such as if someone gets upset when the child doesn't respond within a certain time frame, or when the child refuses to send photos or videos. Coaching the child to delete messages that were exchanged, or the online person threatens to harm themselves if the child doesn't continue talking to them. Excessive compliments and flattery, promises of a better life, saying things like, "They're the only ones who understand you." Don't talk to strangers. Tabak said kids should apply the same principles they're taught about in-person relationships to the online sphere. On January 16th, during an announcement in London, Federal Public Safety Minister Marco Mendicino told CBC News the problem of luring is exacerbated with predators using social media's unique features to their advantage. We really have to make sure that we are focused like a laser on the subject matter so that we can prevent that crime from occurring as much as possible, and also help victims and survivors of that kind of exploitation on the path to recovery, Mendicino said. Ottawa's comprehensive strategy to deal with online harm includes investments in organizations like C3P and a national strategy addressing child and human trafficking, Mendicino said. Tabak believes social media giants also have a responsibility to improve moderation, so there's a vetting process of who can create an account, along with better tools to report suspicious activity that allow people to give more context as opposed to just reporting an account. This also includes getting rid of features that delete messages and My Eyes Only, which is for snaps that a person wants to keep private and requires a password to access, Tabak said. In the emailed statement to CBC, Snapchat said it uses technology to detect and combat abuse and reports any known images and videos featuring child sexual exploitation to authorities, including C3P. We use machine learning-driven tools to help us identify keywords and account behaviors that suggest abusive accounts or other suspicious activity, the spokesperson said. We use these signals to flag high-risk accounts for suspicious activity review and continuing to aggressively develop this capability. The following are facts about child sex trafficking in Canada. 93% of the individuals that are sex trafficked in Canada are Canadian, not foreigners. The vast majority of victims of police-reported human trafficking were women and girls, 97%. Between 2009 and 2016, 35% of Canadian sex traffickers or pimps were between 18 and 24 years old, and 31% were 25 to 34 years. 4 in 5, 81% persons accused of human trafficking from 2009 to 2018 have been men. First Nation, Inuit, and Métis women and girls, youth in care, runaway and homeless youth, persons with disabilities, refugees, and migrants. and LGBT persons are most vulnerable to being trafficked. About half of all victims of police-reported human trafficking, 45%, are between the ages of 18 and 24. Nearly 3 in 10 victims, 28%, were under the age of 18, and the remainder, 26%, were 25 years of age or older. Between 2009 and 2016, two-thirds, 66% of human trafficking offenses reported by police between 2009 and 2016 were reported in Ontario, over 1 in 10, 14%. Incidents were reported in Quebec, and just under 1 in 10, 8%, were in Alberta. 2.4 million Canadians reported being sexually victimized as a child. 9 in 10, 90%, incidents of human trafficking were reported in census metropolitan areas. Thank you for listening to Human Monsters. Bye for now.